The council chamber of Aurelia 7 pulsed with soft blue light, the bioorganic walls responding to the tension in the air. Each of the 7 counselors sat in a suspended ring of woven mycelium, their translucent skin dimming in waves as anxiety rippled through the chamber. Elder Cyril leaned forward, his voice slow and heavy. The Carrick horde has breached our outer colonies. They will reach the central cities in less than 2 rotations. They will show no mercy, hissed Jalarin, the youngest of the council, eyes narrowed. And yet we debate words while cities burn. Elder Vena's tendrils flicked in disapproval. You propose we contact them? Earth is not an ally. They are a last resort. Silence. No one spoke the name lightly. Terra. Death World class? A species built in pressure, conflict, and cruelty. When Earth moved, it moved like a blade, not to assist, but to end. Jalarin didn't flinch. We face extinction. Earth may be brutal, but they are the only ones the Carrick fear. Cyril closed his eyes. The chamber dimmed. All in favor? 6 biolights dimmed. 1 remained steady. Recorded, the chamber confirmed. Jalarin stood and approached the central console. His voice trembled, but his hands were steady. To the Terran Directorate, this is a Class 1 distress transmission from the sovereign planet Virelia 7. We are under hostile invasion by Carrick forces. We request immediate military assistance. We are a non-combatant civilization. Our coordinates follow. The chamber fell dark after he spoke. A quiet acknowledgement beat pulsed back from the void. They had sent the signal. Far across the stars, buried beneath the reactive armor of the HFY Vengeance, Captain Ilya Voss watched the signal scroll across the display, stark against the void-black interface. Routing confirms Class 1 request from Virelia 7, said Lieutenant Rami without looking up. Non-aligned species. Status pacifist. Civilian. No military assets. Voss tapped a gloved finger on the armrest. Has Carrick activity been confirmed in the system? Yes, Captain. 3 dreadnoughts. 14 support vessels. Standard Carrick siege pattern. She exhaled once. No hesitation. The algorithm in her head already formed the answer. Activate Protocol 9. Rami paused. Full cleanse authorization? Voss turned toward him. You want to wait for them to be overrun? No, Captain. Just confirming. The lights above the command bridge dimmed, replaced by a dull crimson hue. The warship's AI core stirred, weapons began pre-charging, and drive cores cycled into combat readiness. Across the deck, crew members moved with methodical precision. No speeches. No dramatics. They had all trained for this. When Earth answered a call, it didn't do diplomacy. Commander Arden entered from the tactical suite, eyes locked on the glowing mission board. It's a trap, he said quietly. Carrick love bait. Use weak worlds to draw us in. Then let's show them what happens when you tug the wrong line, Voss replied. Arden hesitated, voice lower now. Virelia's civilian centers are dense. Their entire culture is nonviolent. If we go in full burn, we neutralize the threat, secure orbit, and extract survivors if feasible. If not, we leave nothing behind. He looked at her. Even if they're still alive? She didn't blink. Better a quick end than Carrick occupation. You've seen what they do. He had. She knew he had. Seraph 9 haunted them both. Hesitation had cost lives. ETA? She asked. 6 hours, Captain, Rami replied. Prepping jump. Voss stood. Her uniform, dark gray with crimson lining, bore no insignia beyond a single Earth insignia on her chest. No medals. No nameplate. Just the symbol of a world that had learned long ago, mercy doesn't survive among stars. She addressed the bridge. Begin combat lock. Prepare for zero contact entry. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to reason. We are Earth's final word. The stars folded inward as the HFY Vengeance sliced into reality above Virelia 7. No welcome. No fanfare. Only silence, and the drifting wreckage of Varelian defense satellites, shattered like brittle glass. Carrack dreadnoughts loomed like jagged monoliths, engines burning hot, orbital stations ablaze beneath them. Thousands of lives already gone. On the surface, cities flickered like fireflies, until one blinked out. Then another. Rami's voice cut through the stillness. They're executing grid-wipe patterns. Civilian extinction level in progress. Voss leaned forward, eyes cold. Target primary dreadnought. Load ion lance. Bring the sun to their door. Arden swallowed hard. Firing solutions locked, said Rami. Weapon hot in 3. Outside, the Vengeance stirred, its underbelly glowing with coiled energy, light folding around its structure as a singularity cannon gathered mass. 2. On the ground, Varelians looked skyward and saw no salvation, only a second star forming above them. 1. Fire! The beam struck. No flash, no dramatic explosion, just silence, as the Carrack dreadnought ceased to exist. The vacuum swallowed it like a ghost. As debris rained down on the Carrack fleet, Calms lit up with a desperate, trembling voice. This is Counselor Vena of Varelia 7. Please, please don't destroy the cities. There are millions of us still alive. You've made your point. We are not the enemy. Voss didn't respond. She turned toward Arden. Scan for command clusters. Target communications hubs. Disable first. Rami raised an eyebrow. Mercy strike? No. It's efficiency. Cut off their head before they scatter. Arden stepped closer. We could coordinate evacuations. There's time. Is there? Voss turned to him fully now. How many lives did we lose on Seraph 9 because we waited for evac shuttles? He didn't answer. Rami returned his focus to his panel. Targets marked. Voss gave a slow nod. Proceed. The Vengeance moved forward, silent and terrible, a phantom of judgment carving a path through the stars. On Varelia 7, prayers went unanswered, distress signals echoed into the black, and a simple truth repeated in every heart. They had called the only species that answered every SOS the same way. With fire. S the Warborn. *** next? Lord Executor Krell stood at the viewport of his command ship, arms folded behind his spiked carapace, eyes fixed on the smoking horizon of Varelia 7. The cities below burned beautifully. White stone turned to glass, spires melted into slag. His second-in-command approached, voice rasping through a translator node. We've breached the northern continent. Resistance remains non-existent. Krell didn't look away. As expected. Varelians are silk-thought dreamers. They perish the moment war enters the room. The officer hesitated. But, the Terran vessel has arrived. Now Krell turned. What class? Unknown. No readable signature. Too quiet. Krell's mandibles clicked. They came? He let out a low growl that might have been amusement. Finally, the great butchers of Earth crawl out from under their rock. Another officer approached. Lord, the Terran ship has not responded to any hails. They are holding orbit. We suspect weapons cycling. Krell's amusement vanished. Ready the dreadnoughts. No movement without my command. He turned back to the viewport. Above the planet, the Terran vessel drifted like a predator conserving energy. It didn't posture. It didn't broadcast threats. It simply waited, coiled and silent. Aboard the HFY Vengeance, the atmosphere was cold and calm. No shouting. No rush. Every movement on the bridge was deliberate. Captain Voss stood before the tactical display, a holographic projection of the Carrack fleet spiraling slowly before her. Patterns? She asked. Rami adjusted the overlay. They're not scattering. Forming a containment net around the planet. Still trying to pin us down. They're expecting a dance, Voss said flatly. Let's give them an execution. Commander Arden watched from her right. They don't believe the stories. Not yet. They will. Voss raised a hand. Initiate silence protocol. No outgoing transmissions. No warnings. Rami nodded, fingers tapping. Confirmed. Calms dark. We vanished to their ears. On the screen, the Vengeance ghosted forward, just another shadow in orbit. Then its hull flickered, lines of crimson slicing open like jagged veins. Light built in the ship's underbelly, whispering of death. Executor Krell paced across the bridge of his dreadnought. They're not answering. They're stalling. Cowards love to delay until they think they've cornered you. He reached out, slammed a clawed hand on the sensor operator's station. Where are their fighters? Probes? Scans? None, my lord. Nothing's launching. There. A sound. Not from the ship. Not from any speaker. A low-frequency hum that made the bones inside their armor ache. The viewport darkened. What is that? Then came the beam. A singular, silent streak of condensed fury tore across the void, striking the Carrack cruiser Vilithus Talon. There was no explosion. No debris. Just absence. The ship was gone, as if erased. Gasps filled the command deck. A second beam followed, slower this time, drawn out, like a blade dragging across skin. Another Carrack ship folded in on itself, imploding, then vanishing into sparkless ruin. Krell's voice came out like broken steel. What weapon is this? No one answered. Every Carrack eye was on the screen as a third beam sliced through a battlecruiser. That one exploded. Slowly. Deliberately. Pieces drifted apart like petals scattered by a wind no one could see. They're targeting command vessels, an officer whispered. Krell grabbed him. Scramble the fleet. Fire on that ship. I want its heart ripped out. But it was already too late. The Terran vessel accelerated, not with engines, but with a gravitic lurch that bent nearby ships off course. It moved like no Carrack ship could, sharp, precise, unbothered by inertia. Missiles screamed toward it. The Vengeance didn't dodge. Instead, its point defense grid came alive in a storm of blue fire. Each projectile burst into glitter before reaching halfway. Where are their escorts? Krell shouted. Where are the rest of them? On the Vengeance, Arden watched quietly. They're panicking. They expected a fleet, Boss replied. They got a verdict. Rami interrupted, eyes wide. Detecting stealth signature. Mid-orbit. Cloak dreadnought, flank vector. They're trying to blindside us. Voss didn't blink. Of course they are. Mark its trajectory. Load graviton spears. The display adjusted, tracking a ghost between sensor pings. Rami calculated intercept angles. Target locked. Awaiting confirmation. Voss said nothing for a beat. Then, fire. Two spears of magnetized dark matter launched silently, curved midspace, and struck the cloaked ship. For a second, nothing happened. Then it screamed. The sound wasn't audible, but the data stream translated it: structural howling, internal core rupture, crew evisceration. The ship tore apart with a violet pulse, its fragments cascading into the upper atmosphere. Rami sat back. Target destroyed. Arden let out a low breath. That was their ace. Gone before they even saw us. Voss finally spoke again. We're not here to fight. We're here to remind. On the surface, the Varelian capital watched in stunned silence as the sky flickered with unnatural light. Fires still burned in half the city, but above them, glowing trails fell like comets, Carrack wreckage crashing down like punishment from the heavens. Counselor Vena stared upward, voice soft. Is that Earth? Jalarin was pale. That's not rescue. That's retribution. Back in orbit, Krell's fleet began retreating. No order had been given. It was instinct. Primal. Survival. But Voss had seen it before. They'll try to flee, she said. Let them. Arden raised an eyebrow. You're letting them live? No. Voss tapped her command key. We track their course. Then we release the hounds. Moments later, the Vengeance launched 8 hunter drones, silent, black, each locked to a Carrack ship's unique signature. They would not stop. Not until impact. We can't be everywhere, she murmured. But fear can. Rami watched the drones vanish into the stars. Do you think they understand now? Voss didn't look away from the carnage on the screen. They don't have to understand. They just need to remember. The ruins of Varelia VII's capital smoldered beneath the ash-thick sky. What once had been a living city of crystalline towers and sky gardens now resembled a graveyard made of melted glass. Structures twisted into slag. Roads cracked under the weight of fallen debris. Somewhere beneath the wreckage, millions lay entombed in silence. And above it all, like a judgment that hadn't yet ended, hovered the HFY Vengeance. On its bridge, Captain Ilya Voss stood motionless. Her eyes scanned the surface feeds with mechanical precision, no expression, no twitch of regret. Behind her, Commander Arden moved with less certainty. Initial scans confirmed the Carrick base is neutralized, he said quietly. But the fallout radius reached Sector 11. Civilian sectors. How many? She asked, voice even. 3 million. Maybe more. Voss nodded once. She didn't look away. Log it. Tag as collateral under Article 7. Arden hesitated. There were children down there. There were Carrick commanders down there too, she said. He stepped forward. We could have waited. Confirmed evacuations. They begged us. Voss finally turned. And if we had? What would have happened, Arden? He didn't answer. She answered for him. They'd stall. Delay. Use the civilians as armor. We've played that game before. We bled for it. Seraph 9, Arden said. The name hung in the air like a phantom. Voss walked past him, her boots silent against the deck. I lost 1,000 troops there because I paused. Listened. We negotiated while they dug in. They used our empathy like a scalpel. Never again. Arden watched her go, his jaw tight. We didn't save these people, Ilya. We buried them faster. On the surface, the air still shimmered with heat as Counselor Vena stumbled through the debris, wrapped in a scorched robe. She was bleeding from one shoulder, her left hand burned black. Around her, a few dozen survivors emerged, coughing, limping, helping one another through the wreckage. They reached what had once been the central plaza, a symbol of unity, peace, and culture. Now, it was just a crater. A comms beacon sputtered nearby. Somehow, it still functioned. Vena staggered to it, her hands trembling as she activated the uplink. Static. Then a voice. Identify. Came the cold transmission. She didn't know who it was, just that it came from the ship above. This is Counselor Vena of the Varelian Council, she rasped. We are alive, barely. You killed them all. Our cities. Our children. The silence on the other end lasted too long. Then, mission complete. Hostiles neutralized. Your planet is secure. Vena shook her head. Secure? There's nothing left to protect. Back aboard the Vengeance, Voss listened to the transmission in her private quarters. She didn't respond immediately. Her reflection in the dark window stared back, grim and still. She tapped a recording device and spoke quietly. Mission log, Operation Silence Fire. Carrick forces, eliminated. Civilian casualties, high. Strategic objectives, achieved. She paused. Emotional response, none. No deviation. No hesitation. Another pause. Then, almost too soft to hear. I didn't pause this time. In the medbay, a young Terran engineer named Silva sat with his arm in a sling. He'd taken shrapnel when a secondary battery overloaded during the final barrage. Across from him, Rami sat with a stim patch on his neck. They cheered for us, Silva muttered. Did you hear that? Right before the orbital strike. They thought we were their salvation. Rami didn't reply. Guess that's what we are, Silva continued. Salvation with teeth. Rami finally looked up. That's what happens when you send a Deathworlder an invitation. You don't get kindness. You get a correction. Silva stared at the floor. They'll never call for help again. Rami shrugged. Then maybe we did our job. In the central data core, Arden reviewed the mission record. Frame by frame, he rewatched the final order. The orbital strike. The flash. The aftermath. He paused the footage. Zoomed in on a child standing on a rooftop, arms raised as if waving. He closed the file. Then he opened a private channel. "Captain? We need to talk." They met on the observation deck. Earth loomed far in the distance, a blue dot among stars. Silent. Unreachable. "You knew this would happen," Arden said. "Yes." "You didn't try to minimize it." "No." "Then why answer the call at all?" Voss stepped closer to the viewport. "Because if we hadn't, the Carrick would have made them suffer for weeks. Raped their cities. Turned them into breeders and slaves. We ended it in an hour." Arden's voice cracked. "You call that mercy?" She turned to him. "I call that the best option left." He stared at her, searching for something. A flicker of doubt. A hint of remorse. There was nothing. "You've become what they say we are," he whispered. Voss looked back out into the stars. "We became what we had to." Later, the Terran Directorate received her report. It was accepted without correction. No investigation was launched. No penalties issued. The official summary read: "Hostile threat neutralized. Local casualties regrettable. Earth remains the final deterrent." On Verelia 7, survivors began rebuilding, not because they believed in recovery, but because there was no alternative. They didn't curse Earth. They didn't thank it either. One child, barely old enough to speak, sat in the shadows of a broken spire. She held a small Terran insignia she'd found in the rubble, blackened, half melted. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "We called them angels. But they brought fire.